Maalab na pagbati po sa ating lahat. I am Pia Arboleta, Professor and Chair of the Department of Indo-Pacific Languages and Literatures and former Director of the Center for Philippine Studies. On behalf of the Center for Philippine Studies, the Center for Southeast Asian Studies, and the Philippine Consulate General in Honolulu, welcome to today's lecture. Our Visiting Scholars series has brought scholars like Michael Corosa from Ateneo de Manila, Paulo Paculan from Ateneo High School, Giovanni Caballero from Mindanao State University, Joy Marfil from University of the Philippines, and Poet Laureate from Virginia, Luisa Igloria. Through the Consulate General support, we also revived the Kulintang class that has not been offered at the university for 3 decades, they tell me. Today, we bring you the last speaker for our 2023 series. Our distinguished guest is the director of the University of the Philippines, Diliman Center for Ethnomusicology since 2016. He earned his PhD in ethnomusicology from University of Hawaii at Manoa, so he is one of your very own. And he was a distinguished degree fellow of the East-West Center. He has conducted extensive field research in the northern Philippines and the southern part of Luzon Island, contributing significantly to the scholarly discourse on this subject with the publication of several book chapters. His doctoral dissertation was on musical practices associated with funerary rites of the Kankanai of Benguet, and through the years has written and presented papers on related topics focusing on the music cultures of the Cordilleras. He has also conducted field research on Philippine lowland music traditions, particularly among the Tagalog of Quezon Province. He has also pioneered a study on Pinoy hip-hop, which he presented in a professorial lecture in 2011. Possessing both a bachelor's and master's degree in composition, he is a versatile artist who continuously presents new works across various media. Notable among his artistic contributions is the theater piece Putri Anak, Isang Bagong Komedya, which premiered at the Cultural Center of the Philippines in 2017 and which garnered critical acclaim. Among his initiatives at the center is the repatriation of digital copies of field recordings of their source communities, a project dubbed Recollection, which has been ongoing since 2016. In recognition of his outstanding academic and artistic accomplishments, the University of the Philippines bestowed upon him the official rank of UP Artist II in 2018. He served as the Dean of the UP College of Music from 2017 to 2023, demonstrating his commitment to leadership and academic excellence within the university. We are so fortunate that he took time out of his busy schedule to give 2 presentations for us this week. Mga kaibigan, please welcome Dr. Verne de la Pena. And the lay is courtesy of
Maraming salamat. It's really good to be back. Nothing much has changed actually. Kids still dress up the same way we did 30 years ago or so. And the building is definitely the same. We'll start off by learning a song, okay? So I think you have to come closer.
Oh, my snag.
Here. When I was here at the East West Center, we used to play in a band. Actually, it's an Irish band. They call it the Green Isle String Band. Bill Phelps was there. I don't know if you remember the rest. That's Jan Renzel and Bruce. Sorry, I'm having a senior moment. But anyway, so we sang bluegrass music, but of course I had to teach them Pinoy music. So this is one of the things we thought. We sang. I'm gonna try and teach it to you today. I haven't played an ukulele since I left in 2000. Inday bailita, di ko kay kaboy, amon pa isang time. Inday bailita, di ko kay kapoy, among pamahal malangoy. And the B part goes, among paniud ko, ulang ho'y tinuto, among pagihapon, balanghay gihapon. Let's try that. Among paniud ko, balanghoy tinuto, among pagihapon, balanghoy gihapon. Inday bailita, di ko kay kapoy, among pamahal balanghoy. Inday bailita, di ko kay kapoy, among pamahal balanghoy. Among panito, bulanghoy tinuto, among pagihapon, bulanghoy gihapon. Sige naman, inday bailita, di ko kay kapoy, among pamahal balanghoy, among pamahal bulanghoy. We used to sing that with your dad and the Silangan singers. And it says, Inday, let's dance. And Inday answers, no, I'm too tired. I'm too tired because I've been eating cassava for breakfast, cassava for lunch, cassava for supper. So it's a Cebuano song. I'll tell you more about it later. Okay, we'll come back to that song. So this afternoon will be dedicated to Philippine popular music in the 20th century. And my contention is it's really music by Pinoy youth for Pinoy youth. Kabataang Pinoy is how you say it in Filipino. However, the Kabataang Pinoy, the Filipino youth, evolved as a distinct cultural group, probably beginning in the American colonial period. Before that, traditionally, you don't have that group of people called youth. I mean, in traditional societies, you have kids, and then they undergo a rite of passage, and they become adults, and they enter the adult world by marrying, etc. But with the introduction of education, urbanization, of course, and then with the Americans coming, education was secularized. You find the youth gradually distancing themselves from parental control, developing their own cultural identity. So basically, they began to form their own conscious, kind of imagined identity. They created unique forms and symbols and established their own cultural spaces. Okay, so in the early years of the 20th century, the new American models became the marks of identity. So you would have vaudeville, stage shows, cabaret, jazz, and all the dance styles. You know. The young people took to that as they began to discard the outmoded products that were received from the Spanish era. Okay, so you have zarzuela and all the traditional songs, balitaw, and so on. This is not the first time Philippine culture is doing that. For example, you had comedia before as a theater form, and then zarzuela came in as a new global form, and Filipino artists embraced it and discarded comedia as you know, old and passé and so on. So zarzuela actresses, what happens is they will able to transition themselves to the new forms. Okay? And the new forms mainly are this, right? And of course, also coming in would be the recording as early as 1910 siguro mga ganyan. You would have Victor Records, I'm sorry, and Columbia Records. And the first two recording artists were Maria Carpena, a zarzuela singer, and then transitioned into opera and popular music. And so did Honorata Atang de la Rama. She was a zarzuela artist and then transition to the new forms of vaudeville and so on. And then when the film came in, they became the actresses as well. No? And Zarzuela itself transitioned into the film medium, so that what was staged before, what was produced on stage, began to be produced on film. But the greatest of them all probably is Katie de la Cruz, and she was called the Queen of Vaudeville. Notice that vaudeville now is Philippinized as vaudeville, just like Zarzuela was Philippinized to be Zarzuela with an S. Okay, so she would perform in packed cabaret in Filipino. You have the Savoy and the Palace. These were dance halls in Manila in the 1920s and the 1930s. And Katie, she would render sultry, jazzy renditions, no? And she was known for challenging ultra-conservative norms of society with her sexually explicit numbers, such as this balut, for example. Oh, I'm sorry, this is Katie de la Cruz singing Planting Rice, one of the earliest recordings of Filipino folk songs intended for an American audience. So you see classified Planting Rice. So part of the race records that was ongoing in the American end, where they tried to capture new markets. So the Philippines was one. So like I said, Katie de la Cruz would sing very suggestive songs. Of course, balut is known to be an aphrodisiac, right? And so she lived a long life. This is probably in the 1980s with Ryan Cayabyab's show, where she will perform.
I'd like to thank Mommy Kate for being with us tonight, Celeste, Mitch, tatlo pong malalaking estrella sa larangan ng musika. Of course, ang pinakamalaki, wala kayong magagawa. Pinakamalaki na yung kay Mami, mega, double, triple, mega star. Yung mga star. Thank you for coming. And I'd like to thank the audience for being with us tonight. It was a fun show. And I hope we'll have more of Mommy Kate in the future. And
Nakatungkod na ako, no?
nakatungkod na kayo.
Nakatungkod na ako.
Eto na yan!
Halos araw-araw sa tapat ng aming bahay, mayroong isang babaeng lagi nang nagdaraan. Sulong ay dilaw, kung lumakad ay paimbay. Nakawikaitan nito sa gitna ng daan. Balot, Penoy, balot. Bili na kayo ng itlog na balot. Sapagkat itong balot ay mainam na gamot sa mga taong laging nanglambot. Balot, Penoy, balot. Dapat na kayo kumain ng balot. Sapagkat itong balot ay pampalipas ng pagod at mabisang pampatigas ng
So, for those who don't speak the language, she says, balot helps you harden your knees. Dramatic pause there. Okay. By the 1930s, you have Filipino composers now writing in the new style, Americanized, started weaving in the elements of Western popular music. For example, Dahil Sa'yo, which is always labeled as a folk song. It's not. It's a popular song composed by Mike Velarde in 1938, I think. 1930, right. although this rendition now by Pilita Corrales, probably the most famous one, was done in 1973.
Not Imelda.
So this is the Imelda version that we know, 1973.
Sa buhay ko'y labis ang hirap at pasakit ng pusong umiibig. Mandiwala ng langit at nang lumigaya. Hinang mo sa lusa, tanging ikaw sila ang aking pag-asa. Dahil sa'yo, nais kong mabuhay.
And so on. So you have that slow jazz. I'm not sure if the original one was arranged this way. This would have tinges of more than 1970s film music. But anyway, yeah, it's you listen to it and you will say that's not Filipino sounding anymore. The Filipino composers has imbibed definitely the new style. Okay, listen to this one. So in 1942, everything of course was beginning to develop, to move on, to evolve that popular music, but everything was put on a hold because of the Japanese occupation, the Japanese war, no? 1942 to 1945. And then you have the presence of American military after liberation, and they brought in their kinds of music that, you know, the locals would hear also. So listen to this. I cannot manually forward it, so sorry. This is the Andrews
Of all the
sisters.
boys I've known, and I've known some, until I first met you, I was lonesome. And when you came inside, dear, my heart grew light, and this whole world seemed new to me. You're really swell, I have to admit you deserve expressions that really fit you. And so I've racked my brain, hoping to explain all the things that you do to me. Call me if it's too shame. Please let me explain. Call me
Among
if it's too shame.
pamahabulang hoy.
Call me
Dahil
if
may
it's too
lita.
shame. Again, I'll explain. It means you're the
Okay, so they've taken the melody because it's very popular and they put in the lyrics. Bulanghoy, cassava, a kind of root crop would always come in as a sign of poverty. It's a bad substitute for rice. So in times of poverty, people eat bulanghoy. Okay, but this one actually was also adapted by the Andrews sisters from a Yiddish song. Now, so in the 1950s to the 1960s, you would have the full emergence of a truly distinct youth identity, because that was the country was more stable. That was called the peacetime. Okay? So the movement began among young people from elite families whose lifestyle mirrored Hollywood cultures, dances, fashion, and cars. So the musical experience also increasingly became mediated by recording, radio, and television, which more and more became affordable to Filipino families. And of course, capitalists would apprehend the viability of the emerging market. Now, it was radio that gave birth to the first Filipino teen idols. In radio programs, this one is the most famous one, Tawag ng Tanghalan, or The Call of the Stage. It's long running. It's going on until now on television. Of course, there was a big pause sometime, and then they revived it. And they would produce the stars. The stars would be recording artists who would then also become movie artists and so on. The very first prize winner, champion, was a guy named Diomedes Maturan, who was dubbed as the Pericomo because of the smooth voice, the Pericomo of the Philippines. And he is singing Rose Tattoo. I'm not sure if that's a Filipino composition. I think not. No, it's a cover. But like I said, Diomedes Maturan was the first Filipino teen idol. But more importantly, you have the beginning of the Philippines tagline. You would have Elvis Presley of the Philippines, James Dean of the Philippines, and so on and so on. The track would be so popular that it will spawn not just one movie, but several movies afterwards. So Diomedes Maturan would become a movie star. Another champion there would be Nora Honor, but we'll talk about her later. Okay? Then, in the meantime, television sets became more affordable. So many radio shows like Tawag na Tanghalan would migrate to the new medium. Popular music, the latest dance crazes became what they offered to teens, teen-oriented shows. So such as Jam Session, Night Owl, Dairy Gold, Jamboree, Dance-O-Rama, Student Canteen, another long-running one. It ran until the 2000s, right? So basically it's for students mainly, or teenagers. Dairy Gold Jamboree was underwritten by a popular evaporated milk brand introduced in the country in 1957. Okay, so this is the film version of Dance-O-Rama, the TV show. I don't know if I can forward it. I cannot. Sorry. Okay, too long. Yeah, I was waiting for the part where the hosts would come in and they would speak in English, and so they would banter in English. Now, so the mad search for the new teen idol continued. Now, new bankable names would come up, such as this guy, Bobby Gonzalez, who would be Manila's version of James Dean. Why? Because he's the rebel. He's supposedly the son of a very rich family, but he rebelled and became a movie star instead. So he would perform boogie woogie and rock numbers, such as this, habol habol. Okay. Before I play that, another person, I don't have an example now here, is Eddie Mesa, who would be the Elvis Presley of the Philippines. So you have those tracks. This is Bobby Gonzalez. This is Filipino composition. It's not a
O
cover.
ang babae, pag minamahal, may kursunada ang ayaw-ayaw. Pag panay ang dalawa ay nayayabog, huwag mong dalawin ang tatabog-tabog. Huwag mong suyuin ang ay nagmamaktol. Pag yung iniwan ang habol-habol. May
So boogie woogie is definitely brought in by the American military when they were there during the peacetime and liberation.
Kung may pag-ibig ay di ko malaman, o ang lalaki kung nagliligaw, malulungkot siya ng gusto sa buhay. O ang babae pag minamahal, may kursunada ang ayaw-ayaw. Pag panay ang dalawa ay nayayabot, huwag mong dalawin ang tatabog-tabog. Huwag mong suyugin ang ay nagmamaktol. Pag yung iniwan ang habol-habol.
And then the break. Okay. I remember watching Bobby Gonzalez, no? But he was an old man then, so it's a shock to me to see him, the young rebel. Okay. And then all these popular songs, movies, and dances would depict the vibrant urban life of Manila, of the rich people, and it became the obsession of the general public. They would, everybody would look to the lifestyle of the youth of the upper classes because they were the trendsetters. They would wear the latest fashion, whether it's motor trends, and even their musical and dance choices. Now, the members of the wealthy class, however, maintained separation from the rest by forming their own exclusive cliques or gangs, and they were competitive. So they had such names as Mohawks, Apaches, and the most notorious of all is the low waist gang. Low waist because of the fashion. Natatawa si Manang Irma. The fashion. The jeans were low waist. The lower, the better, right? And they were all kids of well-to-do families, but and some of them were movie stars. The most famous being Joseph Estrada, who would later become president in 1988 and be deposed in 2001, 1998, I should say. Okay. Now, so the mode of production would not only occupy the airwaves and the movies, but also prestigious school events, nightclubs, hotels. It's, the fast life of the rich, and everybody else just watches and so on. And the kinds of music that they would have in their parties were the combacheros. Combacheros again are Latin dances that we imported from Mexico and South America. So Latin dances were very popular, cha-cha-cha, etc. And of course, rock and roll. There were combos during this time now, from the 60s all the way to the 1970s. So that's the gangs. Now, so this new cultural group, okay, further underscored their imagined identity and exclusivity by evolving their own language, their own jargon. These are speech communities, so they say. Okay? So apart from markers such as age, social class, taste, linguistic competence is a way of recognizing who's in and who's not. Okay? So the group would have their own lingo. Of course, in the beginning, this comprised of borrowed terms, cool guys, dolls, cats, chicks, wheels, etc. The things that they see in movies of James Dean and so on. Later on, colloquial terms would be invented based on the Filipino language. One code system, probably the kids now still do remember this. One code system consists of reading or pronouncing words backwards or abbreviating it, right? So for example, guapo or handsome is pogi. Okay? Cigarillo becomes yosi. Hindi is dehins. Kotse is chikon, right? Pare is erap, and so on. But when they talk very fast, it's very hard to understand it. Okay? And that's where Joseph Estrada got the Arab name, right, from that. Okay? So these expressions, this language will find their way into the music. Okay? So Bobby Gonzalez has a track titled Pogi de Hingoli, handsome but doesn't bathe. And it's actually from a movie. From a movie. But the idea of adaptation, adapting popular songs in America, became a fantastic formula. You don't have to worry about composing your own music. All you have to do is adapt the music, and it became quite lucrative, particularly among audiences, the lower class, who are not linguistically competent with the English language. Okay, so for instance, this is Dave Clark 5. Tapos at Richard.
I once knew a lady, a little old lady, before I started to grow.
Okay, and this is Bobby Gonzalez's Pogi de Hingoli. Even instrumentation is the same.
Sa mga babae, ngayon ay marami, mahilig sa mga pogi. At sa kanyang hilig ay mayroong babae na inabot ng konsume. Pagkat ang poging kanyang napili ay isang poging dehingoli. Sa aking ito, siya'y napahatsin sapagkat animo ay kambing. At si kumare ngayon ay nagsisi dahil din dito sa pogi. Poging na steady ay bildong lalaki at sangkaputak ang baby. Kapintasan pa, Mr. ni Mare ay isang poging dehingoli. Naspo lang siyang
Naspo lang, and just
maligo ay hindi niya gawin. Sa biyaya ka na mayroong mga tao.
Okay, so that formula was taken on, and they ran away with that because it's very lucrative. And then, especially with this new genre they call now novelty song, and normally they're funny songs, they don't make any sense and so on. So the one of the first persons who did novelty songs was Fred Panopio. Fred Panopio was a part-time actor, and he was packaged as a yodeling cowboy because he could yodel. And again, he did this song by Glenn Campbell.
I've been walking these streets so long, singing the same old song.
And remember, Fred Panopio was a cowboy, right? That's his persona. So for him, this is Kawawang Cowboy, the pathetic cowboy.
Kawawang cowboy, habang kamoy jamboy. Pananghalian ko ay laging kamuting ka.
Sige, kamote ka. That's Balimoy again.
Ang ate ko at ang kuya, ang nanay, tatay at lola, ang
cowboy is Malaboy. Street person. But here's the kicker. Here. His underwear has holes. And then it just repeats. Okay. Now, when it comes to novelty songs, the king, of course, is the guy named Yo-Yo Villame, who was born in 1932, 2007. Okay. You probably know him for Magellan, and up to now, kids remember when Magellan landed because of that song, right? So he's from the southern island of Bohol, and one of his most famous songs is Butchie Kick, which of course is an adaptation of D.D. Sharp's Baby Cakes. So what he did was one time he just had to write all of this because he's a hit maker. So he was in Chinatown in Manila and he was looking at all the establishment, right, with the Chinese names, the hardware store, the bakery, and he just stringed them together and created the lyrics for that. How politically correct is that? This is Baby Cake.
Don't you know, don't you know, and I love you so. Baby cake, yeah, yeah, yeah. Never, 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 never gonna let you go. Baby cake, yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm sticking to you like cake. Some cats got it and some cats ain't. And you got one and say, oh, baby cake,
A lot of Pinoys know Butchie Kick, but they don't know this song, right? Only Pinoys will find this song. Yeah.
It's so terrible. It's so terrible.
It's so terrible, it's funny, it's good, it's so terrible, it's
We are so
You know, the
horrible.
Philippine Madrigal Singers has a version of that. So you should hear them.
I find understand those lyrics because they don't seem to understandable by Cebuano speakers.
Right.
The lyrics are different.
It,
Maybe
does,
we could
it
compare
doesn't make
that.
sense.
Yeah,
That-
yeah.
It just the names of the Chinese stores that they strung together, and maybe the way he read it too. Okay, and then covers would continue on. So from the 1960s to the 1970s, from the elite groups of the, I forgot to say, the colegialas is one group, the college, exclusive college girls' schools, and then the gangs. And everybody else just was watching them, do their thing and wish that they could have their own lifestyle. By the 60s and the 70s, that youth identity would spread to the lower stratum because then you have secular tertiary education becoming more accessible. So you would have now emerged distinguishing subcultures. I already mentioned about the upper rung is the social or the socialites, mostly students from prestigious schools. And then you have the lower stratum called the bakya crowd. Bakya is wooden clogs, wooden slippers, because literally they still wore those, you know. So basically, they students from public schools probably, or out of school youth, or people from the countryside. The socials, the socialites would prefer the more sophisticated cultural spaces, concert halls, discotheques, and so on. And the other one, the Bakya crowd, took over the more commercially driven television and movie houses, which the social, they just shun these things. And the standard bearer for the Bakya crowd was Nora Nor, okay, who was born in 1953. She bagged the Tawag na Tanghalan Championship in 1967, raised in really in dire poverty in the countryside, but she became very famous, the greatest success stories. And then, of course, because we're in Hawaii, this is one of her covers.
From the ocean, shining in the sun, covering the shore. When I see them, my heart tells me that I love you more than all the little pearly shells.
I don't know the connection of the Filipino diaspora here and the popularity of Hawaiian dances and songs in the Philippines, but it's phenomenal. Okay, so if you have teen idols like that, the next thing is you have to have love teams, right? So the love team of Nora thank you. They were known as Guy and Pete. And they did covers during the time, hardly hear original compositions. She was probably just 16 then.
I could tell that he felt that the way he looked, that he was never forget. Don't tell me, baby, I don't know why. I love you, baby, till the day I die.
So the Bakya crowd were faithful followers of Guy and Pip. Of course, you have competitions. So you have Guy and Pip, and you have another love team of Vilma Santos and Edgar Mortiz. That's B and Bot and so on. And then they would have squabbles just because of that. What was I going to Tirso Cruz actually comes from a long line of musicians who played in nightclubs and bars. So it's a family of musicians, the Cruz and the Cruzettes. I don't have time to show you that now. Okay. Now, yet another subgroup to arise were the rock music listeners. So they pursued, the hippie people. They had these iconoclastic ideals. They shunned the pretense that they saw among the social, whom they labeled now as bourgeois, or petit bourgeois, bourgeois. So following the hippie counterculture, they patronized first American and European rock, until local bands began to write their own compositions, and that would come to be known as Pinoy rock. So the anthem, supposedly, of Pinoy rock is Ang Himig Natin by this group called Juan de la Cruz. from 1971.
Ako'y nag-iisa at walang kasama. Di ko makita ang aking pag-asa. Ang hingin natin, ang inyong awitin, upang tayo'y magsama-sama sa langit ng pag-asa.
Of course, this is driven by industry, and the industry would basically, they're the ones who really coined that term Pinoy rock, and they would cater to that hippie market, the rockers. Later on in the decade, you would have this famous female rocker, Sampalita. So later on, this subgroup would be called Jet Rocks. And there's a song actually, Laki sa Laya or Jet Rocks. Sorry, I did not include that in the example. So Jet Rocks, everyone was wondering what Jet Rocks means. One story is that, you know, they're from the projects. But the projects in Manila are different from the projects in the States. The projects in Manila were housing for government employees, so they were basically middle class. So the Jet Rocks were hippies, but they were kids of the middle class, you know, they were lazy and so on. They had time to do these things. But they put the premium on being real. For them, the social are fake and plastic because they're bourgeois. They focused on the experiential dimension of the music. They call it the happening. That's why you have the experimentation with psychedelic drugs, you know, to enhance that experience. Like I said, the industry would be quick, no, to grab that niche, and pretty soon you have not just rock, but you know, bubblegum pop music that would later on be called the Manila Sound. The Manila Sound would have a mixture of Tagalog, upper class, and in English, you know, the way upper class girls would speak. So that's a mark of code switching. That's the way they talk. No? Just like Valley, ginagawa ba yung Valley girls talk? So that code switching thing, or Taglish we would call it, that's the mark of the colegiala. And then you would have songs catered to them too. So it became called the Manila Sound. A good example is this one by Hot Dog, titled Ikaw ang Miss Universe ng Buhay Ko. So they managed to capture the other preoccupation of Filipinos, of course, beauty contests.
Ikaw ang Miss Universe ng buhay ko. Ilang beses ko pa naman sasabihin sa'yo, sa piling mo'y tanggalan mo ba? May kasiyahan, walang kapantay. Ikaw ang Miss Universe ng buhay ko.
Another band that became very famous during this time is the Apo Hiking Society. With this song, Pumapatak na naman ang ulan, with the use of colloquial words. You don't normally hear that in lyrical life writing, but during this time they began to use ordinary words to describe the typical life of a teenager.
Pumapatak na naman ang ulan sa bubong ng bahay. Di maiwasang gumawa ng di inaasahang bagay. Laklak ng laklak, nang di magdamagan, may kahirapan at di maiwasan. Iba kaya matulugan na lang at baka sumakit ang tiyan. Ang araw ko'y nabubusisi, ako ang nasisisi, bakit ba sila ganyan? Ang pera ko ay di magkasya, hindi makapagsine, at ayaw namang dagdagan. Ubus na rin ang beer, kaya kami na lang lahat sinusubukan kahit walang pulutan. Ang buhay ng naman, walang hinaharap, konting sarap man lang. Radyo, TV at mga lumang comics, wala nang ibang mapaglibangan. At kung meron kang tatawagan, 30 sentimos ika'y makakain.
This is a nice barometer of change in technology. During that time, you would have public phones and you use 30 centavos to call. During my time in college, it was like 20 centavos, 20 pesos already. Well, not during, but after I graduated grad school. Of course, kids nowadays don't know what's a public phone. Okay, but see, the Manila Sound became then a meeting ground for the socials. So there would be artists on the Manila Sound that would cater more towards that end of the social, and then there was more those that would cater more to the backyard crowd. So it was a nice meeting ground. Okay. Now, then, the development of Pinoy rock and Manila Sound would be briefly interrupted with the declaration of martial law in 1972. Because during that time, all radio stations came under the control of the state. So, in fact, for many months, they couldn't air anything except the official pronouncements of the state. Later on, the state would project a new fashion, a new identity for young people. They call it the Bagong Anyo. That was the time when they had new tapered Barong Tagalogs, and movie stars who had long hair would now come out clean cut, and because they had the new look of the new society. And then you have the Kabataang Barangay, which was led by the presidential daughter, Amy Marcos is now a senator. So she led the Kabataang Barangay, and all kids, all youth 18 years old and below were mandated to be a member of that. Another thing that Ivy Marcos was handed was that she became the chief proponent of the Metro Manila Popular Music Festival, or Metro Pop, that would go on for several years and would produce a lot of the popular numbers and artists that we now know. Okay? The very first champion of Metro Pop was Ryan Cayabyab, who recently has also been declared as national artist. Sung by Haji Alejandro from 1978.
Kulay ang ating munting daigdig. Tila ilog pala ang pag-ibig. Kung malalang damay pag-ibig. Kung umabot ka ng tinig, ay sadyang nanginginig. Ulan ang buhay na tuloy umawi. Bawat sandali aking piling mabatid. Ang piling na ay tuloy aking makukulit ang pagkain. Di marami ang di magsasabing ito na
By the way, that singer, Haji Alejandro, was a teen idol as well. He was dubbed as the Kilabot ng Kolehial. What's Kilabot?
Goosebumps.
The killer of Colegialas. Ryan Cayabyab, of course, was conservatory trained, and you can hear in that song, so cleanly produced and so on. But the biggest hit of that batch was not this one, but this.
Nung isilang ka sa mundong ito, naging tuwa ng magulang mo, at ang kamay nila ang iyong ilaw. At ang nanay at tatay mo'y di malaman ang gagawin, namasdan pati pagtulog. Sa gabi natutuyat ang iyong nanay.
Okay, anyway, the song, of course, became a big hit, right? Translated into so many languages, Japanese, Bahasa, and so on. Until the sad story is he sold the rights to Sony, I think, so he doesn't earn anything from it anymore. But to this day, he contends, Freddie Aguilar contends that he was cheated, that he was supposed to be the champion during the time, and not Ryan Cayabyab. But you know, Freddie Aguilar was actually the best poster boy for that new image. He had long hair, sure, and he looked like a rocker, but you know, he sings with a song that has a moral lesson, you know, about a prodigal child and so on. There's a moral lesson to it, and so that was kind of what the state wanted to project. Now, after this, you would have a further action by the state to nationalize airwaves. They passed a resolution mandating all radio stations to play 2 original Filipino works every hour. Okay? So whether you're a dance-oriented show or a classical-oriented show or news, you have to play 2 original Filipino works within the hour. And this became, and the Filipino music that you play there, the blanket term that was applied to it was original Filipino music, OPM. So OPM just means either it's a Filipino artist, it doesn't have to be, it's okay if it's a cover, or it's an original Filipino song, and so on. Okay. So Metropop and OPM became the impetus for the surge of popular music from the late 70s until the next 2 decades. Of course, you have the record industry flourishing with all now a diversified label. You have Manila Sound, you have Pinoy rock, you have Pinoy folk, you have disco, pretty soon hip hop, and so on. Okay, that was their heyday, you know, with all those market niches. Sorry. Okay. One of the niche was the jukebox queen. You know, you can probably call this the progeny of Katie de la Cruz, you know, with suggestive songs and tear-jerkers. In reality, you have only 3 known jukebox queens: Eva Eugenio, Didith Reyes, and Imelda Papin. But they are the whole genre themselves, and you know, people play them. No? Ordinary working class would play them in the jukeboxes. Later on, the jukebox, of course, would be a karaoke. So their tear-jerkers kind of reminds you of Japanese enka or Korean tropes. Very melancholy country sound. But like I said, probably similar to Katie de la Cruz's time. Sounds like enka. Right? And of course, the fashion is like that. And very famously, one of them, Didith Reyes, had a wardrobe malfunction on live TV. So all the more they sold because of that. In spite of martial law and the reign of Marcoses, nationalism and social consciousness continued to grow, especially in the segments of youth among the university students as well as the labor classes and the peasantry. And they would begin to criticize the colonial influences, and they wrote about identity and social justice, and very subtly anti-establishment. You cannot directly be anti-establishment. You can write about anti-colonial things or national identity and so on. One of the leading artists there is Eber Bartolome with his band Banyu High. Sorry, the introduction is long. I cannot. Oh, sorry, not that.
Kumusta kayo?
But this is already later on after EDSA. But the song came out in 1978. It just says, we are Pinoy. You have to be proud of your flat nose.
Tayo'y mga Pinoy, tayo'y hindi ano. Huwag kang mahiya kung ang ilong mo ay pango. Ako'y isinilang.
So this is a rock ballad.
Saan nagmumula ang sikat ng araw. Ako ay may
And often they would adapt the bandurria as part of the band. I don't think it's here now. This is a live concert.
Kung may pakita, tunay na sarili. Kung ating hanapin ay matatag. Tayo ay
The other artist, oops, sorry, is Florante, and his song is Ako'y Pinoy. Sorry for the long introduction. It's a live concert performed already here in America. Oh, no, this is a short one.
Isang Pinoy sa puso't diwa, Pinoy na isinilang sa ating bansa. Ako'y hindi sanay sa wikang mga banyaga. Ako'y Pinoy na mayroong sariling wika. Wikang pambansa, panggamit kong salita. Bayang kong sinilangan, hanggang kong langit ang kalayaan.
Okay. The teen idols continued that phenomenon into the 1980s, right, with the domination of radio, television, movies. Production companies owned all of them. So, you know, you produce a song, you produce a movie about it. And of course, the biggest star there is Sharon Cuneta. And Mr. DJ is from 1978.
Mr. DJ, can I make a request?
You can say this is part of the Manila sound genre.
Mr. DJ, para sa akin ito, sana ay okay sa'yo. Hihintayin ko na patutugin mo. Thank you uli sa'yo. Kahit luma na ang aming awit, nais ko rin marinig. Kahit man lang sa'king alaala, ay makasama ko siya. Nasaan man siya, mayroon pang iba, ito'y para sa kanya. At sana'y nakikinig siya, naaalala kaya niya ang love song namin noon, nagiluma na ng panahon. Mr. D.
And so on. But you know, old uncles who write it in the voice of young people. That's how commercial these things are, commercially produced these things are. Okay, so she was a big star in the movies. Now, you would have the continuation of the dance crazes with the blockbuster Saturday Night Fever. You have that version of those things. In the late 1970s, you have Bee Gees, you have VST and company. This is Awitin Mo at Isasayaw Ko. You sing and I will dance from 1979.
Lahat ng swing.
So here again, Manila sound, disco, brings together, these two groups, although this more towards the masa, the bakyak sound. Many of them actually sounds like Tokyo. I don't know if you're familiar with Tokyo City Pop, that genre. So some of them actually are adaptations of Tokyo City Pop, which we never knew to us because we did not hear about Japanese music back then. Now, the social, of course, the Burgese continued on their exclusive enclaves. Even on television shows, they would continue to have shows that are projecting their lifestyle. The longest running one is the Penthouse 7, featuring prominent kids of prominent families. Penthouse 7 would somehow go off air in 1981, but it would resurrect as Penthouse Live that gave birth to Pops Fernandez and Martin Rivera. Okay, now, post-people power, nationalism continued on, but this time, more with a brighter outlook. And also a new tinge now, you have this consciousness of ethnic music, indigenous music, so they would borrow a bit of that. You would hear that in Francis M. This is now hip-hop. So you hear a little bit of kulintang there. At least mimicking the kulintang. Then you have artists like Joey Ayala, leaning more towards the neo-ethnic sound. This is from 1991.
Alam ko lang na itong planeta'y
the lute, the traditional lute in rock music. Here it's island style, right? You have the reggae beat, which neo-ethnic artists are fond of using. Okay, and now you have in the 90s, later in the 90s, from the 80s to the 90s actually, you have a more diverse styles would blossom. And then of course lifestyles would be very varied. You have social stratification continuing. You would have borrowed terms like the yuppies, the young urban professionals. The jeprox will become the jologs. Then you have the promdies now. Promdies are provincianos, countryside. Promdi because promdi province. That's why they're promdi. And then you have now the socials are the conyo kids, because that's what they like saying all the time. Okay, so the side A, for instance, is the go-to band of the so-called yuppies, those who grew up with Pinoy rock but now are more sophisticated. Side A from 1995 is clean sound because all of them are from music students, well produced. Going back to writing in English. That was a sophisticated sound, right? Clean and so on. The younger kids hated that sound. They're more for the grunge now. And so a group of rockers came up. One of them is Eraserheads. And this song actually caught the ire of the government because of the use of putang ina. So this is rough music, grungy, right? In opposition to the clean sound.
Masakit man isipin, kailangan tanggapin, kailan ka naging seryoso sa kanya.
Because now with hip hop, Pinoy hip hop, that's nothing, right? But those first songs that you have cursing, that was banned for a while. And the thing now is you have this old band. Oh, but by the way, so these are the music of the Tito, and these are the younger ones. So, but now the thing is, lately, theater groups are producing musicals out of all of this. So you have a musical about Eraserheads, but the one that started the musical is, oops, sorry, hindi ko pala. It's this song.
Yeah.
This is rock for the Bakyak crowd. But they produced it as a musical about 3 years ago. It was such a big hit. But the voice production here, the quality is similar to the Jukebox Queens, but this time upgraded as rock. And then, now, is the birth of what you call the birit, B-I-R-I-T, which is the typical Filipino way. You're not a good singer if you don't birit. Birit is when you force, that kind of sound. That's the birit. Another karaoke thing. So, Aegis Band was phenomenal. They dominated the CD, E market. Quadruple platinum for the album where this came from. And like I said, resurgence now. Kind of like tongue-in-cheek when they produced that musical about this, but kids came and watched it anyway. Okay, I will stop right here, I think. And probably if you have any questions.